doing? That was a Billy Idol excerpt from Rebel Yell. Thought it was an appropriate beginning to this FSD titled The Compliance Gene. I think it explains a lot about human nature and investing and risk-taking and entrepreneurship. This is a theory I've actually had for a long time. I've never really shared it. But I wanted to elaborate on this post I did this morning about called Apocalypse Now. Okay, the basic idea of that post is that throughout time and cultures, people believe they are living in the end times. Okay, for like 2,000 years, people believe that we've been living in the end times. It's been proven wrong and wrong again, but that's the belief. Many major religions, of course, have this apocalyptic, revelatory kind of concept baked within them. Part of that helps to enforce compliance. That's one way to interpret this. I'll come back to that a bit later. But one of the ironies of this idea that everyone believes they live in the end times is that it's a really egotistical concept, right? Like, even in the midst of the world potentially ending, the average human being says, I'm lucky enough to be born at the end of the world. Okay? It shouldn't really be a lucky thing to be at that time, but the way the ego interprets meaning in the world is it assigns a high probability that this is it. They were all wrong, I'm right, and the end times are here, and it's going to happen in my lifetime. Okay? That's just a fact throughout human history. I've looked into this subject. Kind of interesting. It's true for all the major great religions, by the way, across time and culture. Like, so where did this come from? Where did this come from? I believe it's an evolutionary trait that was selected for. If you go backward hundreds of thousands of years, you had a Homo sapiens competing with Neanderthals. And one of the big puzzles is, why did Homo sapiens beat out Neanderthals? Why? Why did Homo sapiens thrive? Neanderthals had larger craniums, for example. They had lots of physical capabilities. It's not obvious that Homo sapiens would outcompete Neanderthals. Okay. One theory for that, which I think makes a lot of sense to me, is social cooperation. Humans can cooperate better as a team than Neanderthals. Okay? So cooperation is very important in a world of scarce resources, where you got to forage, you've got to hunt, you've got to move, and you need people to play specialized roles. And you need people to contribute and cooperate and not defect. You have a classic prisoner's dilemma when you have a civilization, right? The cost of enforcement to norms that would guarantee survival of civilization is too high unless people are voluntarily adopting these norms. This is the similar issue as in surge capacity. There's not enough surge capacity to go around for anything. You know, you saw that in COVID. If people go to the emergency rooms, they get overwhelmed. There's a snowstorm. There are not enough plows. It's just happened. There's not enough surge capacity. And the same thing goes for social norms. So my theory between the Neanderthals and the Homo sapiens is that the Homo sapiens developed the compliance gene. The compliance gene enabled people to coordinate on pain of social enforcement, social costs, which could be significant. They could be ostracization, they could be death. Look at the death of Socrates, for example, in a much more mature society that consider what those behaviors would have looked like hundreds of thousands of years ago. If you've got someone manning the fort at night while everyone's sleeping, that person's got to keep watch, right? Their natural instinct might be to go leave or abandon at the first sight of risk, but they don't. They have a cooperative instinct. So I believe that was what was selected for. It's like a compliance gene. and it drives normative reinforcement that enables cooperation and outcompetition of other groups, right? Maybe the Neanderthals were more capable, more physically stronger, maybe they're smarter, but they couldn't act in concert. Maybe just small groups who had a pair bonding could act. Maybe a family or a couple could, but they couldn't get a tribe to organize. Okay, so that was the advantage of the Homo sapiens. There's a whole field called evolutionary psychology, which gets into topics like this and where does language come from. It's a super interesting topic. Spent some time with AI rediscovering that if you're curious to learn more about that. Okay, now this instinct is still with us. We've co-evolved with it. It plays a role in brands, right? When people wear a brand like a Nike swoosh or a logo or their sports team, they're signaling that they're part of some kind of tribe. And there are hazing rituals to join a tribe. If you've ever been a fraternity or a sorority or even just joining the school, there are family traditions or religious traditions. And they're stamping in what are the norms that you should be adopting for the next generation. People identify a lot of emotional value to these norms too. They're very powerful. In the present era, environmentalism is kind of a modern secular atheist religion, in my opinion. Okay? My strong opinion. So there are a lot of rituals that people do. Look, I recycle. I care about the environment. I want clean water. I want clean air. I'm driving a car that's fueled by electricity. Okay? So I care about the environment. I got it. All right. But there is like environmentalism as a religion. It really is. But it's the same idea of the compliance instinct. You know, thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that, without weighing the costs and benefits in a rational manner. Like some policies have a cost of life measured at a very high rate versus other policies. They're not really rational policies. They are born out of emotion. A lot of these policies are. Okay, you know, when I was at Columbia, I had a friend who was an environmentalist, and she challenged me to join the environmental club at Columbia and lead it and lead Earth Week, which I did. I said, what better way to disprove my own hypothesis than to just join the enemy camp? So I did, and I was not dissuaded of my point of view back then. I'm not dissuaded of that view now, but I did try. I gave it an honest look. So that's that. Like, environmentalism is a kind of modern religion in some aspects. You see that in other areas too, like DEI kind of took this on as well. It's this hyper intellectual norm creation that people intend to impose on others, right? I mean, Marxism is a form of that, communism, socialism. These are all forms of ideology where one party's enlightened, the others are not, and we're going to enforce and bend others to our will based on their interpretation of the good, okay? The greater good, okay? And the road to hell is paved with good intentions, probably appropriate there, yeah? So when it comes to investing, if people have this instinct that the world is ending, okay, in their mind, they also hyper prone to anxiety around risk. Most of the time, the market is climbing a wall of worry. It's not sliding down a slope of fear. Most of the time, it's climbing a wall of worry, right? There are a lot of other biases that enter through this compliance gene, okay? An example is like the CFA curriculum. I have MBA, I have CFA analysts. They will tell you the most relevant things to markets. There are a lot of relevant things in CFA curriculum. It's a wonderful curriculum, okay? But there are strategies that make money that aren't even discussed, contemplated in the CFA curriculum, they're actually like antithetical to it, especially animal spirit strategies or momentum strategies, for example. Okay, the CFA curriculum is biased towards quality compounders, growth at a reasonable price, value investing, and those are great strategies, and they have a time and a place. By the way, I'm not trying to diminish them. The quality compounding does work. Compounders do work. You can grow book value, and price should follow intrinsic value. All of that's true. Okay, it doesn't work all the time though. It's not working in this market. But there is if you come from certain programs, you are indoctrinated to judge and enforce your compliance on others, and poo-poo markets and say bad things about markets all the time if you don't think they're going the way you are. Like, for example, Jeremy Grantham. Like, Jeremy Grantham probably has like a heavy dose of this compliance gene, the apocalypse gene. The world is ending. We must sell stocks and buy bonds. You cannot own U.S. growth stocks. You cannot own technology, right? It's that kind of, I think, compliance gene that is at work there too. What else? So look around, where you are, where you grew up, the cultures you participate in, the traditions you're a part of. Aren't there certain people in the group that are really highly compliance oriented? Meaning they really are the person that wants to enforce upon the others, right? I think that person is there. And then there are others that have a bit more irreverence and a bit more of a scouting or exploratory mindset, and more creative and more willing to challenge or synthesize. The great founders of American history are like this, of course, right? The Wright brothers, Steve Jobs, Tom Edison, and so on and so forth. I mean, the founders of the American Republic, who signed the Declaration of Independence, that clearly was an act of defiance, an act of courage. They truly were signing a death warrant for themselves with their own names, where the King George would know exactly who to go after, right? That is one of the aspects that's made America a very special place culturally, is a tolerance for a range of behavior, so long as we respect the property and lives of other people, so long as we do not do harm to others. Europe has a heavy dose of the compliance gene, and it's struggling to innovate. Okay. So what else? That's that. The compliance gene, the compliance instinct. I do think there's some gender tilts around the compliance instinct. By the way, it's not determinative. I think it's a bias. But I do think there are some tilts around that. Attitudes towards risk-taking do vary between men and women. It also varies by age, by the way, too. So there are different tilts. When people have kids, the risk preference can change also. Maybe some of that's just shifting hormones and shifts in brain structure, which happens after you have kids. That might play a role in this. But I thought it's something to think about, right? The compliance instinct. When people get excited about a norm and they want to enforce it upon others, you should watch out. A lot of bad things can happen. Like the Cultural Revolution, Khmer Rouge, right? These are the bourgeois getting slaughtered, all this stuff, right? So anyway, that's my theory. The interesting thing about the compliance gene, again, it's this concept of bringing into reality an ideology with which people subjugate other humans, right? That's not to say that there isn't a role for compliance. Of course you need compliance. You need to ensure just laws are enforced. You need to have a nation of laws as opposed to a nation governed by the powerful, right? right? You need a concept of justice. You need a concept of just laws and confidence in the justice system. All that makes sense, right? But we do have this instinct where things can run a bit far, and some of this is coming from a lack of connection and meaning, perhaps, that people historically might have found in religion or spirituality. And they're finding that now in nature, which is a sound place to find meaning, by the way. I spend a lot of time in nature, actually. But I don't try to create an ideology out of it and enforce that upon others, right? So anyway, hope that was interesting. We wrapped up a great Lumina event tonight. It was quite long. It was 3 hours. We have some great videos we'll share with you tomorrow. It was a beautiful townhouse. It's on the market for $25 million. There was a painting in the lobby that was worth $15 million. It was at an off angle, but no one corrected it because no one wanted that thing to drop on the floor. So we just kind of left it off angle by a little bit. I thought it was kind of funny. It was to share that story. But we had a great community. Thanks all of you that could make it. We're doing these about once a month or so. And then hopefully we'll do it twice a month and once a week. So we'll have another one in July. But they've been a great way to bring entrepreneurs, investors, founders together. It's a really high quality group. And every time I walk away learning more or make a new meaningful connection. Very interesting one this time. I met a professor of philosophy in New York City, and we were talking about Socrates and the impact that Socrates had on his death. The man published nothing. It was his disciple Plato that proselytized Socrates. And it was the death of Socrates, written by Plato, that allowed Socrates to echo through history. Okay, really amazing. We talked about World War II. Really fascinating individuals. So you attract what you put out in the world. I could have talked to this guy for 2 hours, and he had been listening to these FSDs on YouTube, and he heard about the invite, and he stopped by and introduced himself. It was a super fun conversation. I hope to meet him again. All right, take care, folks. Make it a great evening now. Talk to you tomorrow.